you. Thank you, Ace, for being here with us. We are truly, truly grateful. So we're going to start with this episode of this talk uh, with Ace Schwarz, Mx.Ace Schwarz. They are a 6th and 7th grade science teacher in Maryland, USA. Ace identifies as non-binary and uses they, them, and theirs pronouns. They created a website with a collection of resources, yes, blogs, posts, and reading lists to help teachers and educators deconstruct the gender binary, support LGBTQ plus students either in their classrooms, and create a more inclusive environment for students. And occasionally, they talk about some of the epic things that are happening in the science classroom. So thanks again. Thanks, Ace, for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
No, thank you. And we have Maria Paula Gravano. She's a qualified English teacher, graduated from Instituto Superior del Profesorado Joaquín V. González. At the moment, she's teaching children in state primary schools in Buenos Aires City. She has done several postgraduate courses on designing teaching material, neuroscience, and emotional intelligence. She considers CSE to be of vital importance in students' education in the construction of a more equitable society. She is currently writing her dissertation on female gender stereotypes in young adult literature for the bachelor's degree at Universidad Tecnológica Nacional. So thank you, Paula.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah. So Ace, to start this conversation, we would like to know, first of all, how and when you decided to become a science teacher at elementary school.
It's interesting because I wasn't supposed to be a teacher. I was supposed to take over my family's soda business. They owned a soda company, and so I was all set out for me to like take it over. And when I was in high school, like junior year, I was looking at business schools, and then I got the chance to teach Sunday school at church and absolutely like fell in love with it. And took some child development classes in high school, junior and senior year as a result of that, and was like, I'm not an office person, like I want to be a teacher. And so I completely shifted my focus and looked at teaching schools. And I'm not really sure how I went from teaching like preschool kids, so 3 and 4-year-olds in Sunday school, to middle school kids in college, but I did, and I love it. So most people don't know, but yeah, I was supposed to be a business person for the longest time.
Okay, that sounds amazing. Okay, and tell us about your project, Teaching Outside the Binary. When did you come up with it? I mean, while you were in, I don't know, in high school already, you thought about it, or when you became a teacher at college? I don't know.
Yeah, it started out as my personal account. So Teaching Outside the Binary was not always the name that I had for the account. And it was just when I started to decide like to transition, and I kind of like documented my journey because it was nice to see other people in the LGBTQ community and also like know that I was not alone. So I started documenting more of my journey, and then people had a lot of questions. Like they didn't really understand what non-binary meant. They didn't understand like asexual and aromantic, which are the sexualities that I identify with. And so I started using the platform to educate like about those topics as well. And then it kind of turned into like this really cool mix of sharing my personal story and educating about LGBTQ inclusion and just LGBTQ topics in general. And it kind of grew into something that I never really expected. And so I made a website and started building resources and blog posts. And that's kind of how it got where it is today. And I'm still continuing to grow the account and learn where my voice fits in terms of intersectionality and where to amplify. And so I do a lot of amplification because there's so much that I am still learning. So it's just kind of grown into something that is really epic and not what I was expecting when I started sharing about this about 2 years ago.
It's great how you amplify other voices and how we find out about other accounts that also make our work better, and we learn a lot. So that's epic. Thank you.
We have also other questions, like, for example, how and why do you think teachers should create LGBTQ plus inclusive classrooms? Because maybe some people or some teachers especially don't quite realize of how important this is. What's your opinion about it?
It's so important, and it was really, the timing was really good because the Trevor Project, which is a really huge LGBTQ like suicide hotline in the United States, they released some statistics, and it's really truly a life or death situation, like it can be for LGBTQ students. 40% of students of youth have seriously considered attempting suicide in the last year, according to the Trevor Project. 50% of trans and non-binary youth considered suicide, which seems really scary. But having just one person respect their pronouns reduces that risk of suicide by about half. So it's a really big deal. And, you know, there's so much bullying that goes on in schools. GLSEN released a huge survey about 2 years ago, and 95% of LGBTQ youth reported like homophobic bullying at school. And so it's like all these negative statistics like just show how much work there's still to be done. And I think people like don't understand how much that can wear on a student, like not having a supportive environment, not having people who just respect their name and their pronouns. It can really be impactful. And so like that's why the work is so important.
Yeah.
And then you asked about like how to do that. Oops, sorry, it froze.
No.
You were saying how we could go about teaching the pronouns. I mean, how to go about this at schools with students.
Mm-hmm.
That's where you left.
Sure. There's a lot of different ways. Okay, cool. There's a lot of ways to create inclusive classrooms, and it's important to like understand just how much the gender binary and heteronormativity like play a role in schools. And so the gender binary society tends to operate under the gender binary, where there's only two genders, male and female, but there's so much more than that. So understanding that first is really big. And then heteronormativity is where we assume that heterosexuality, like men and women together, that's like the default. So every student has like a mom and a dad, which is not the case. And so understanding how those two things, those two constructs play a role in education is really important for teachers, because then you can go disrupt that, right? So like using gender neutral language in class. So instead of referring to kids as boys and girls, or you guys is a common one that a lot of teachers use. You can use more neutral language like everybody, students, learners, things like that, including LGBTQ books. There's so many books at all age levels. That's not just a conversation for like middle and high school. It can be done at any age. And including LGBTQ figures in history, in social studies, and talking about scientists, mathematicians, like even just saying that this person was LGBTQ can be big. Never underestimate the power of visibility.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it is so important that we first as teachers realize of this, how powerful, I mean, is the way we talk to our students and the way we address them, and then it's not so difficult, right, to contemplate the non-binary. It's just a little change, or adding or asking our students how they want to be named or addressed, let's say. So, okay.
Mm-hmm.
And you even provide like a worksheet for your students at the beginning of the course where you ask them all these questions, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Yes.
that's
It started out as like a little half sheet, and it's grown into like a full page get to know you sheet, and it was interesting. I never expected the half sheet to go like viral. Like it went. I mean, I get messages about it being used like in Asia and like all these places I never expected. But basically, the new sheet, the 2.0 version, the top half is dedicated to name pronouns and like respect, where I can use those with for students. So like, can I use them when I contact home? Can I use them in front of other teachers? And giving students the chance to like tell me that is really big. They deserve autonomy over their identity and how I share their identity. And then the second half is all like access questions, like figuring out how they learn best, what helps them. So it's really a holistic like introduction, and it's truly just an introduction. One of many things that I do with my kids the first week of school.
And does it have an effect afterwards with how you build rapport and the connection throughout the course? Do you feel that it has, or it's been having an impact in the connection with your students?
Yeah, I think so. And it's interesting how many kids have never been asked their pronouns before. And I always like start out this sheet. I've been doing some version of this for about 3 years. And I always start off by modeling, like, my name is Mx.Ace Schwarz and my pronouns are they, them, and theirs. And this is what that means. So like if a kid has never been asked their pronouns, they actually so I've had some students who are cisgender, meaning they identify with the gender they were assigned at birth, say, oh, I don't know how to fill this out. And so that's why like explaining what pronouns are, like some kids have never had that before. They know what a pronoun is in terms of grammar, but like they don't know what a personal pronoun is. And so that was really interesting, something that I learned. And so it's a good way to build connection. And then for the kids who do use different pronouns, or use pronouns that they were not assigned at birth, like it's a really easy like way for them to see, hey, this person knows the community, understands a little bit of what I'm going through. And so there's a connection that built there. And then I use the data, like they tell me like how they learn best. Like I use that throughout the year. And I give them the sheet twice a year, the beginning of the year and the middle of the year, because students' needs can change, their identities can grow and change. And so it's important to like honor that by recognizing, hey, you're not the same person you were in September. So let's do this again. And sometimes things change, but most of the time things don't, but at least they know like that I recognize that they're individuals, and that, you know, especially in middle school, like it's such a time for growth. So things like that kind of signal that to them, I think.
So it has happened to you that some students maybe don't know what their genders are when you present the worksheet? Because that was one of my questions, how you went about it. Because I was really wondering if all the students were aware of that. Because in my case, that wouldn't be the case. So you had students who don't know what that means. And in that moment, you explain to them. That is the way you go about it. Great.
Mm-hmm.
Great.
Yep.
Yeah, it opens the door. I think it opens the door even for them to address others, to start asking and wondering, I have never done this before. And for that person, it's important. So I can start doing it. So the message is amplified, and you are building a respectful and safe environment for your students. So that's great.
More teachers do this, then more kids, more students will know it. So yes, it's a way of teaching and learning all together. Yes, it's great.
Yes, we have an average of life expectancy for our trans community here in Argentina that is very, very low. So it's very important if we start from the very first years And it's very important also to learn it in our teacher training colleges or universities to take it to yes, more places.
Yeah, and I never learned this in college. So I never learned about LGBTQ history at all. So like this the idea of normalizing, asking for pronouns, giving pronouns, making this a more normal thing so it doesn't seem like out of place. Like it shouldn't be out of place. And so like you're exactly right. Like more people have to do it.
Yeah, and we can all include that. I kept on thinking about this worksheet that you give at the beginning of the year and then during the middle of the year. And, you know, I teach future teachers. I have like a subject in teacher training college. And I suggested your website. I said, okay, last lesson, look at this website and see what you find there. I think it's very interesting. So, yeah, that's wonderful what you do. Okay, any other questions that you have or?
Yes, we have a question related to material because you have lots of material in your website, also in your Instagram account, in stories. And we've been presenting teachers with literary material, for example, for young learners, picture books, and then they asked us a lot about young adults books. So we thought maybe to ask you to do like a top 5, like a final countdown of great books that we shouldn't miss, or at least we should give them the opportunity, check them out, look for them. So we would like to know your suggestions, like your top 5 of books.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I love reading so much. I'm enjoying doing that this summer, but I think definitely Felix Ever After by Case and Colander is a really beautiful story. And let's see what else. We've got the Stars and the Blackness Between Us by Janata Petrus Nasa, which is also a beautiful story. I Wish You All the Best by Mason Deaver is another young adult with a non-binary character. And Check Please by Ngozi Ukazu is a graphic novel, and it was the best-selling webcomic on Kickstarter that got turned into a graphic novel, and it's awesome. And then we also have, this isn't LGBTQ, but it's an incredible story, Love from A to Z by S.K. Ali. And it's got two Muslim main characters, and you don't see that very often in young adult. But that was I just finished that, and I couldn't not put that on this list. It was so wonderful.
Yes, we've been like looking for material because we don't have lots of material here in Argentina. So generally we have to buy it through Amazon or Book Depository and bring it here. And it's very important to include all the big gender spectrum in the stories. So that's very important, because maybe the ones that we've got first, or the most common, we're only focusing on one part of the spectrum. So it's very important, especially, and we are in non-binary visibility week also, so that's great.
Yep.
Right. And what about you in particular? Do you have any special author or favorite author or book that you like the most?
I love picture books, and I love kid lit. Kid literature is my favorite, and I have a really special place in my heart for a picture book called They Call Me Mx by Lourdes Rivas. And it was the very first story I ever read with a non-binary character. And it's just a really simple, beautiful picture book about what it means to be non-binary. And I've never felt more seen in my entire life. And I remember crying as I read this picture book. And it's probably one of my all-time favorites. I have like 2 copies of it on my bookshelf.
Imagine the power of bringing that book to your classroom and show a student, giving visibility and representation.
Yeah, ACE has got lots of books. I mean, you have like PowerPoint presentations with books for kindergarten, primary, and secondary school or high school. So you offer a lot of material. Yes. Okay. And how old? Yes. Sorry.
No, and what is also interesting is the appendix with all the different terminology. That then I also saw the PowerPoint presentation from Teacher Pay Teacher. I think that it is there somewhere. I downloaded it. I think it was very interesting. As a teacher first, as an adult, right? For me, to start from there, to continue from there, because in fact I am there, but halfway through, let's say. So it's also very interesting to also have a clear definitions for each, because if not, everyone considers everything to be the same, and I think that there you lose the power in order to empower yourself and to identify yourself with your identity, right? We need to be clear about different terminology, and I think you were very clear in that. I loved it. I downloaded it. I have it on my computer now.
Thank you.
Yes, I think we should educational. Recommend everybody to go to their website, check all their material, because it's excellent. So yes, it's a great help. We are learning, truly. We are learning. So we are also being educated and trying to amplify the message. We made mistakes also in the way, so we also try to learn from that, to apologize. So we are truly thankful for all your work.
Thank you. Thanks. And I have to give a shout out. The book list this year were a collaborative effort, and so I just want to shout out like Gender Inclusive Classrooms, Tiana Reed's LGBT, the Tiny Activists, and Inclusive Storytime. They helped so much, because the first year I did the book project, it was like a 60+ hour project, and so they helped like curate books, and it was definitely a collaborative effort this year. I'm so proud of those lists, and it's cool when people like tell me that they've used them. Like, that's a really neat feeling. So thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, this is a question. I mean, I was wondering now. I mean, what about your colleagues' reaction when you talk about this? Because you know that adults, I believe that children and students get used to anything. But sometimes your own colleagues might be a problem. So what happens in your case? This is just out of curiosity.
Sure. Yeah. So it's I taught. I'm not in the same school anymore. I moved, and so I taught in a very conservative area. A lot of this was very new to them too. You're absolutely right. The students were not really a problem, and usually some dialogue, and it was fine. Colleagues were a little bit harder sometimes. I had a really amazing core group of friends in my building that were advocates and, you know, stood up for me and helped and were incredible. And then I had people who, you know, I just never talked to again. And we have a staff of 80+. We had a staff of 80+ people, so like it wasn't hard for them to avoid me. And they never did anything like outright, but there are some microaggressions, like not wanting to use the term mix, so people would just call me by my last name, which isn't cool, and constantly messing up pronouns and not really feeling like there was an effort to correct. So it was a mixed experience. I would say that the positive experiences with my friends outweighed those negative ones, but it was definitely still really difficult. Yeah, and there's there were a few teachers who actually like asked kids for pronouns too. Once I explained like how I did it, they did it in their classroom, so it wasn't just me, and that was really cool and a nice show of solidarity. So yeah.
That's
Okay.
great. That's great. Well, thank you. Thank you so much, Ace, for your time, for sharing with us all your work as a curator of books, and for also sharing great websites and accounts that also amplify the message and share material with us, so we can take this to our classrooms, to our schools, to our colleagues, to teacher training colleges, for to take it to future teachers as well. Like it's a chain reaction. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.